Welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Clemens Hoffman. Each week we will discuss tools, tips, and ways to radiate your best life ever, interviewing practitioners, authors, and luminaries to help you on your path. Wellness, joy, peace, abundance. What do you want to radiate? Hello, and welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. Today we are going to radiate something that is near and dear to my heart, the topic of being enough, with international speaker, best-selling author, and psychotherapist Patti Ashley, Ph.D. and LPC from Boulder, Colorado, one of my favorite cities. Welcome, Dr. What should I call you? Dr. Patti? Dr. Ashley?
Just call me Patti. That's fine.
Oh, welcome. It's so nice to see you, Patti. This is a challenging time for all of us. And I've been looking through your website. I've been going through your materials that I was sent by your publicist. And we need what you are talking about now. So much.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. It's near and dear to my heart, so it's great to share it.
Oh, absolutely. Now, you've just recently released a new book. You've had several other books, but this summer you recently released, you said the subtitle has changed. So what is the title of your book?
It's called Shame-Informed Therapy, and the subtitle is Treatment Strategies to Overcome Core Shame and Reconstruct the Authentic Self. And it is for clinicians or people who are working with people who are who show up with shame, which in my research shows it's the majority of us. As Brene Brown says, we all have it. Nobody wants to talk about it, but it's kind of a thing that's, I think, showing up.
Right. So shame, and this is a big topic. Like you said, everybody has it.
Mm-hmm.
From something as minor as the third grade spelling bee, it can be something as huge as a parent who wanted to instill shame.
Mm-hmm. Or didn't want to instill shame, but did, because if you look at the old parenting practices, they were all shame-based. Do as I say, not as I do. You should be ashamed of yourself. Stop crying. Get over it. And we're just learning now how to change some of that. And I think we have a long way to go. So I don't think parents do it on purpose. I don't think any parent really wants to instill shame in their child. The old parenting practices taught parents to do that, however. And
those old parenting practices did change behavior. Perhaps in the immediate, if a child is acting a certain way, the parent wants to stop that behavior. These old parenting practices would stop that. But there's damage.
Right. And Bruno Bedelheim, who was a well-known psychologist back in the day, said, what we really want to do is we want to instill self-discipline instead of impose discipline. And the old parenting practices wanted to, do as I say, not as I do. You should do this because I say so. And we're just learning how to restore that. And I think we have a long way to go because it's in our body memory, which is what the book is about, is changing some of the somatic cellular memory around it.
Right. Yeah. How far back does this cellular memory go in our family?
Well, the research is showing we could be carrying 14 generations of ancestral DNA in our body memory. So that's a lot of cleanup. If you think about, it wasn't until the mid-20th century that we did research. I always like to say we're the only species that has to research itself to understand how to get along in relationship. The animal kingdom seems to figure it out, but we humans have too much gray matter and we try too hard to make things happen, and instead of really instinctually knowing what we need. And so we learned from our research in the mid-20th century that we'd been doing this wrong for a long time. And so my first book, Living in the Shadow of the Too Good Mother Archetype, was based on my doctoral dissertation, which was about women not feeling good enough as mothers because I myself was a mom at the time. Well, I still am a mom, but I have grown 30-something children and 3 grandchildren now. But I was in the thick of it, with 4 little ones, and I was doing parent education, and there was just so many women saying the same thing over and over. I just can't get this right. Everybody else seems to have it right. So I studied that for my doctoral research and really recognized that this unconscious memory and our body memory is in the shadow, as Carl Jung would say, which is the place where we put things that we think are bad and we don't want to talk about. So it's a lot of learning that all feelings are okay, but all behavior isn't. And we've been talked out of our feelings in the old parenting practices for, centuries. Oh, well, more than centuries, thousands of years. And so we have to change that. And in order to do that, we have to dig up what's in the unconscious. And then we're afraid to do that because, anyway, it's this pattern. That's why they always say we keep there's an unconscious repetition of the past. And then moms, I was just talking to a mom today about this, how we turn it inward. We internalize it. It must be my fault. Instead of let's look at the collective, let's look at history, let's look at the suppression of women. I mean, honestly, we didn't get the right to vote here in America until 100 years ago. We just celebrated that big day. But 100 years, women couldn't even buy a house on their own without a man until 1970. So that's 50 years. So we have a long way to go in terms of cleaning up just in this lifetime. But if you look at the 14 generations of ancestral trauma, we got a lot of work to do. And so moms, go easy on yourself. That's my advice. It's, we have to lighten up and realize that we have a lot of new narratives we want to write that have never been written before. And that's the exciting part.
I was working with a client just today who is a father rather than a mother, but who also is dealing with these questions. That, how my father raised me is not how I want to raise my son. And I'm recognizing now that, some of the damage that was done by this father who, what did I say? Now what did I do? Et cetera, et cetera. And so we're having to undo all of this. Why do you think this is all coming to our awareness now in this time?
Well, like I said, the research gave us information. What I found is the women I was working with, the more books they read, the worse they felt. And that's when I realized it wasn't in the cognitive mind, it was in the somatic memory. And so I started doing retreats for women where we could do dance and art and music and poetry and really do some right brain activities to kind of shift some of the body memory. And I do want to say about the dads, I love that. And people used to say to me, why aren't you writing about dads? And because I was a mom and I was researching women, but men do have similar experiences. They vary to some degree, but as men and women vary to some degree biologically, and the way they think and all that. But I'm glad you said that because I don't ever want to leave out the dads. As a matter of fact, I've teamed up with with a friend of mine, a work partner, and we've done workshops together where his is the dad project and mine was moms. And so I think parents in general are all trying to figure out how to get this right, and it's not easy because, again, it's a story that's never been written before.
Absolutely. And it does seem like this is coming to our collective awareness now with all of the talk that, at least in my circle, about the divine feminine, toxic masculinity, divine masculinity. And we're having more of an awareness and a conversation about what our roles are, not only as individuals and gender-based beings, but as as parents and right. So this it does seem to be coming up now in a big way.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's what we need to heal the planet is we need more of the feminine. And, when I was doing my doctoral research, the Da Vinci Code came out, and I was fascinated fascinated by, I read the scholarly research, Margaret Starbird and the Chalice and the Blade, and I just got knee deep or neck deep in the Mary Magdalene mythology because, or no, it wasn't a mythology, I guess it's a mythology, but story. So, because here I'm thinking, okay, well, if this is true, what the scholarly research is uncovering, that maybe she and Jesus were married and maybe they taught together and maybe she studied in the wisdom schools and maybe she taught Jesus what he was supposed to be teaching. Why did we write her out of the story for 2,000 years? And then I grew up Catholic and my mother and grandmother adored the Blessed Mother. And then I realized here's the split of the divine feminine. We have the virgin and we have the whore, and so anyway, I just couldn't get enough of this idea of how the feminine, and it isn't necessarily gender-based either.
Right.
It's the sense of, it's almost like right and left brain, when we think about, logical versus feeling, thinking and feeling in the left and right brain. It's similar in terms of Jungian psychology. They call it the anima and the animus, which is the masculine and feminine energies, where the masculine is more left brain, thinking, logic, analyzing, reason. And the right brain is sensory, feeling, creativity, intuition. And we need a balance of both. But we've been in the dominator culture, we've cut off a lot of the right brain feminine in order to feel a sense of power and control in the world. And that's just been going on for thousands and thousands of years. So if you look at the Mary Magdalene story, well, we cut her out. We changed the story to fit this dominator model. And here we are today, with the Me Too, Time's Up, racial injustice. People are crying out for more balance because the patriarchal dominator model of greed and power and control is killing the planet. We could be extinct if we don't do something different, in my version. So it's like The Wasteland, T.S. Eliot's poem, The Wasteland, it's about the dying off of the feminine, and everything dies if we don't restore the feminine. So my work has been a lot about restoring the feminine, and the shame work. I found it was fascinating because I got into the literature and the research around the neurobiology of shame. And what I discovered is it gets set up where? In the right brain. So it was fascinating because I felt like instead of trying to talk about Mary Magdalene to maybe an audience that doesn't really understand it or doesn't want to know about it or has all kinds of, religious, connotations to it, I can talk about the neurobiology of shame, and I can talk about the right brain, and I can talk about integrating right and left brain. So it's super cool. And I think right now we need it more than ever.
All of these divisions, masculine, feminine, right, left, black, white, all of these divisions everything amplified so much right now. And so, this needs to come up and come out. And honestly, in my work as a past life regressionist, a hypnotherapist, I see narratives of Magdalene, of Jesus coming out in people's psyches. And it's
interesting. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Well, I've taken a group of people over to southern France, and we have another trip planned next summer, hopefully. And I have an amazing tour guide who takes us to some of the sacred sites where they believe Mary Magdalene did do some of her teaching. And it's beautiful, and it's so near and dear to my heart. So whatever we can do to restore the feminine and the sense of compassion and connection is what we need right now on the planet. Yeah, it's a tough time, and we're in the middle of this pandemic and an election year and racial injustice and all kinds of, right now we're in the middle of wildfires on the outskirts of where I live, but I haven't seen my beautiful Colorado blue sky in almost 2 weeks. And so we've got climate change, we've got hurricanes hitting the Gulf right now. We've got so many things happening in the middle of this pandemic that people have to kind of step back and reflect. And that to me is the feminine. The feminine is internal. and the masculine is external. So, I did a course, a free course when we were in quarantine called Go In, Not Out, that's available on my website for that reason, for people to just, if I'm going to spend some time, more alone or inward, kind of give me a compass. Because I think we tend to be so distracted and external and looking for things. This is what's happening with my clients is, I can't go do all the things I like to do. My last client likes to ice skate. And she's like, well, maybe I can, but then I have to get a babysitter and or, Frisbee golf and what's going to happen in the winter when I can't do that anymore. So it's like all the things that we would go out and do for our self-care aren't necessarily as easy to access. And so now we have to kind of find this self-soothing, radical acceptance inner work, like Viktor Frankl talked about in Man's Search for Meaning, or the mystics, Teresa of Avila and St. John of the Cross talked about in their internal work. And that's the feminine. So that's what I'm hoping in this time, that it will give people an invitation to go more in and find the things that really do give them hope, that aren't about what's out there.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. We need to go inside, but we get to go inside. And this is really the biggest gift. We have to find a blessing in everything. The blessing of that is that we do have this time to go inward. Yeah. Now, this journey of shame and this journey of recovering from shame and reclaiming our divine feminine, reclaiming our balance, is it just me, or is this more embraced, talked about by the women in our culture?
Ask me that question again.
Is this question of shame, of this introspection, this desire to return to a divine balance of masculine and feminine, it feels sometimes that it's more women who are seeking this.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, because again, women tend to be a little bit more right-brained and men are more left-brained, which is why, when I do couples work, it's like I have to tell the man, take your toolkit off. Let's be present with the emotions. Let's learn how to listen. Let's learn how to do this. But again, it's not necessarily gender, especially with, we have so much of the transgender and, just different gender identities. So it's more typically men and women are wired differently, but not necessarily. But that's what you'll see for the most part. So yes, women are definitely more open to understanding feelings and emotions for the most part. However, I've sat in women's groups for 20, now probably going on 30 years now. And in Boulder a few years ago, I had a woman approach me and she was starting the Women's Network here in Boulder. And I was on the focus group. And I said to her, you know what, I've been in these groups for 20 years now, and we're not going to do anything until we bring in the men. And she went, oh, but it's a women's group. And I was like, we have to engage men. I mean, if you've read anything of Robert Bly, Iron John, and back in the 60s when, men were exploring their femininity, he talks about how the pendulum swung too far and men lost their warrior self as they were trying to embrace their feminine. And I think it's like anything we learn to do, we swing from one extreme to the other. So I think it's really, how can a man be strong and feel empowered and also be open to the right brain, creativity, feminine, and vice versa for women. And that's what we see with women going out in the workplace, and women working outside the home. They're embracing their masculine, but we haven't really talked about how we do both, integrate both parts, and raise a home and a family. And look what's happening with parents now having to homeschool and work outside the home, now inside the home. I know my daughter's a high school teacher and has an 8-year-old, and she called me and she said, I've been crying for 3 hours all day yesterday. I don't know how I'm going to do this. It's impossible. How do you do that? How do you work full time and homeschool your child and be and she's a single mom?
Oh, Well,
So yeah. And I've been working with clients today because school starts tomorrow here in Colorado, and the anxiety and the how am I going to do this? And so it's learning how we balance homemaking and parenting and working outside the home, and really realizing, I always think good news, bad news is, I think we kind of wanted to avoid that, things that we need to do to make a house a home and raise children takes many full-time jobs, right? And so women want to go to work, and they ought to go to work outside the home if they want to, but we just kind of kept diminishing, well, who's going to do all this other stuff? We'll get done. What happens is moms sleep like 2 hours a night, So, and dads are getting more involved too. But again, anyway, we just have a long way to go in terms of integrating the masculine and feminine. And I really feel like, again, restoring the feminine means who is going to be raising the babies? Who is going to be doing this work of making a house a home? I love to create a comfortable home space, and that takes time. And it's okay if you want to work outside the home. Let's not minimize that women have traditionally done what's called women's work, and it's the work of several, if not, 10, 20, 30 full-time employees, and they don't get paid for it. So we have to figure out who's going to do that work and how we're going to integrate those parts.
Right. Well, how we can balance ourselves to accommodate both the action of the working and then the nurturing and the qualities of creating a home and a home environment. And if we have learned anything during this COVID-19 chapter, is just the importance of family life, the importance of schooling, the importance of education, and the importance of what parents do.
Mm-hmm.
The essentials.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. We have learned to treasure our teachers.
And teachers too. Right. I mean, talk about suppression of the feminine. And, teachers don't get paid a lot of money. Women don't get paid anything when they're stay-at-home moms, but it's just assumed, it's just work that's supposed to be done. It's really, now we really get to see this is big. These are big jobs. This is a lot of work. So absolutely.
Anything good comes out of this. Please let it be that teachers earn the respect that they're due and the pay that they deserve.
Right.
That is my soap.
No. Well, I know. And I know I was a special education teacher for a while, and it's hard work. It's really grueling. And even if you get the summer off, it takes the whole summer to recover. And then it's demanding and it's hard. And we look at, when I look at people in the corporate sales world and they're making, $200,000-$300,000 selling hospital beds with bonuses and vacations all around the world. And then teachers are in the thick of it all day long, and they don't usually get even lunch breaks. We have to stay with the kids for the most part of the day. At least I did as a special education teacher. And we get the summers off, but like I said, it takes the summer to recover. People don't realize that. And
you don't really get the summers off. I mean, you divide your yearly pay monthly, so you get paid, but you're not getting paid for staying home or not getting paid for not working. It's just divided differently. So yes, that is important. I'm looking just again through your press packet, your press materials and everything. Your scope of work is so broad. And it reads like all of the things that are near and dear to my heart. So about all of the trauma surrounding mass shootings, the trauma of separation from children from their parents, of shame, of mindfulness, gaslighting and manipulation, of it's not written here, but narcissism, all of these things that are topics coming out in our world now. My God, are we messed up or what?
Mm-hmm.
No wonder that we've got so many issues, because we've got all of these things that we're having to focus on and deal with. So in your work, you tackle these things.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the shadow material I was talking about. Carl Jung, we push so much down into the shadow for thousands and thousands of years. And nobody really wants to look at the shadow because they feel like it's parts that are not acceptable. That's the shame. Shame lives in shadow. And I heard Deepak Chopra, or saw him write, people think that the shadow is the opposite of love, when actually it is the way to love. So this is the tricky part about being able to allow ourselves to look, to like go into the basement, in that dark cobwebby basement, and go, okay, so this is me. So maybe I am a little narcissistic, or maybe I am a little needy, or maybe I am a little overbearing, or maybe I am a little jealous. That's okay. All feelings are okay, but all behavior isn't. And let's put it on the table, and let's bring it into the light, and let's kind of restructure it in a way that we integrate and we feel more whole, because whatever's in the shadow is there for a reason, but we're so afraid to look. And I think that's we're having to face a lot of the shadow right now, because there's no place to run. You can't run, you can't hide.
Did you know that Radiate Wellness has a subscription-based premium content Facebook group? Think of it like the premium version of this free podcast. In this premium Facebook group, you can find great content like replays of online classes, meditations on angels, chakras, mindfulness, and more, guest speakers, mini classes, polls. Plus, you'll be the first to know of guests that we have scheduled for the podcast and can submit questions for them. You get all of this great content for one low monthly price, and the first month is half off. You can subscribe by going to radiatewellnesscommunity.com/shop. Click the subscriptions button and you're in. Also, while I have your attention, wherever you're listening to this free podcast, if you could just do us a couple of favors, please. One is go to hit the subscribe or follow button. Then you'll be notified of all of the episodes we have coming out each week. Also, please rate and review. It sounds really simple, but it helps us to grow our audience when people are looking for great podcasts. And when we grow our audience, we can do bigger and better things and bring you even more great guests. So please do those couple of things, and that will help us grow this audience and this podcast. Thank you so much for listening.
Well, and all of this, I do believe, is coming up for healing now. All of the feelings that had been long buried about race, about class, about social structures, those are all coming out now.
Yeah.
And also some of these really tough questions that you reference here, the separation of children from their parents, that this is something that a lot of the country thinks is okay. And
how can anybody think that's okay? That's what I can't wrap my head around, but everyone has different ideas, but it breaks my heart, Christy. I can't even sometimes think about it, because if you look at the shame research and how shame gets set up in the right brain, and we know that the first 3 years are the most important years for brain development, and it's mostly right brain. So it's feeling emotionally safe, it's feeling seen, it's being mirrored, it's being heard, all the things that we know about attachment, and feeling like the big people are keeping us safe. Then we develop a feeling of safety and that we're lovable. And this is the key with shame, is that we don't feel lovable when we don't have that emotional safety from the big people around us. And so these poor children who are so frightened are creating actually what happens is the neural networks get pruned off that should be developing to say I'm safe, but but the brain doesn't develop them because there is no feeling of safety. So then we create all kinds of stories once we get older in our left brain about what we need to do to be lovable. And that's how we create narcissists, and that's how we create terrorists, and that's how we create sociopaths. You know, those people have not gotten their needs met in the early formative years, and they try so hard to make it in the world, and they do whatever they need to do in order to survive. And these poor kids are, it just breaks my heart.
Exactly. In my world, this is root chakra trauma.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. How are you ever going to feel safe in the world when you're in it?
These children are permanently damaged.
Yeah.
And but in our collective country, there are people who think that that's okay, that that's the acceptable price to pay.
Yeah.
That is an acceptable punishment for people who didn't.
Yeah.
Want to be free.
I can't wrap my head around that one, but yes, you're right.
Exactly. So I feel like there's so many things that need to come up in our collective healing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also the post-traumatic stress reactions related to mass shootings. And I'm sorry to be talking about such depressing topics, but this is our world right now.
Yeah. And I know before COVID, I work with some high school kids and college kids, but in some middle school, and they would tell me, the high schoolers would tell me the stories about the shooter drills, which, just activates the trauma. So, the body doesn't know if it's real or not. And so they're acting out the shooter as if the shooter is really there. So we're re-traumatizing these kiddos. Plus, one of my girls said, and they tell us where to go and where we're going to hide, but the shooter is usually one of us. So what's the point? So, kids are so smart. That's the other thing. If we listen more to our kids, the world would, and I'm hoping that these kids coming up today are going to completely, eradicate some of the terrible things that have been going on for all those thousands of years. But yeah, so what PTSD, we know about PTSD is there's no time in body memory. So when we hear, say, a loud noise, we learned this from, Vietnam vets, they go back into as if, maybe they saw their friends getting shot in combat. And there's a flashback as if it's happening now, and they're re-traumatized. And so this is what's happening with the school shooting with kids. And, hopefully they're getting therapy and they're working through the body trauma. But it's a long time, and it's a lot of work. It's lifelong, really, probably lifetimes. You do, like you said, past life regressions. I think we've got lifetimes ahead of cleanup to do, and hopefully we'll move in the right direction instead of, more of the same. But it's tough. It's tough to feel that old trauma as if it's happening now in the body. And, I can't. How horrible it must be to be a child in school. So first of all, that feeling of emotional safety, our parents send us off to school thinking it's a safe place. Where's the safety in that? So again, developing this sense of self and being okay and lovable, when we don't feel safe is really challenging.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Challenging times. I wanted to talk about something else that's here and of course your materials, mandalas as mindfulness tools. So this is shifting gears quite a bit. Can you tell me about your use of mandalas?
Yeah, that's great. I worked with a couple business coaches years back, and they all would harp on me like, you gotta have a niche. You gotta have a niche. I'm like, but I like everything I do. I'm interested in all of this, and I don't want a niche. So when I started working with Steve Allen Media, he said, good for you, because you can talk about so many different things. And I was like, I'm so glad to hear that, because everyone's been telling me I need a niche. She's like, no, because you've got so many great topics you can speak to. So mandalas, I love mandalas, because my experience of the mandala I found about 30 years ago after my divorce, and there was an artist who came to town when I was living in Virginia, and I just was always curious about mandalas. It's a Jungian, Carl Jung used them in his therapy practice, but they're also ancient spiritual practices. You can see in the rose windows and cathedrals. You can see them in Tibetan sand mandalas and Native American sand mandalas. You can see circles in nature. I don't know why, I was just curious. And so I took this class, and I got hooked on mandala drawing, because what it does is it helps calm the nervous system. Art, any type of creative art, gets you into your right brain. And again, that's where we want to go for this healing. Because again, if the right brain has lost the neural connections of safety and feeling lovable, the more experiences we can give the right brain that feel good and are in creativity and in pleasure and joy and play and fun, we know now there's neuroplasticity, and we can rebuild those neural connections. So that's the good news. So, but if somebody said to me, well, maybe you should paint, back then I'd say, oh, that's ridiculous. I wouldn't even know where to start. I'm not good enough, yada, yada. But the mandala gave me a form, especially with this artist, Paul Hasenstam, who lives in Laguna Beach, California. His method was to divide the circle into 8 quadrants, and he had stencils. And so after doing some guided meditation, you pick stencils that represent what maybe came to you in the guided meditation, like a moon or a star or a flower or whatever, and you place them around in the 8 quadrants with white. You do it on black paper with white pencil. And then you start coloring it, and it just becomes this whole thing. It's beautiful, and it actually connects to the unconscious. Carl Jung calls them windows to the soul. So it accesses, like I do dream work too, and it's a similar thing when the symbols that come out of us actually give us something archetypally we can connect to. So I was going through some stress after my divorce, and I had just taken this class, and I was in my head around, what am I going to do? Did I mess up my kids? Are they going to be ruined for life? Am I going to have enough money? How am I going to survive? The typical things single moms do shortly after divorce. And I said, I'm just going to go draw a mandala. And I literally could feel my whole body just like relax as I was coloring. And so that's why, a lot of people have these adult coloring books that came out a few years ago, which I was really happy to see. It's the same idea. So it calms the nervous system. So since that time, I've done retreats and workshops and personal mandalas and individual mandalas with clients. And again, I think it's a good way to, and now I actually do paint. Now I'm crazy creative. It's my therapy on the weekends. Sometimes it's just to go down and, draw in my basement. And, but the mandala gave me, it was almost like a window into my creative self. So they're very special to me. I really, really appreciate the work of mandalas. So yeah, thanks for asking.
It's just so fascinating what you say about creativity and neuroplasticity, about calming the nervous system, et cetera. And that it's such a tragedy that I find schools are cutting art programs, music programs, all these things that help a child's brain.
Yep.
Not necessarily education, but it helps reinforce education. That a child.
And that's what I've been telling the parents who are, worried about homeschooling, especially at the very beginning when it was all of a sudden, here I am, what do I do with my kids? And even the teachers didn't even know what to tell the parents to do with the kids because they're learning how to get it all straight. I said, you know what? Throw some paint and paper out on the table or put some music on and dance in the living room, because for that very reason, let's lighten up on the academics and let's give the right brain some play and some fun, and you can do it with your kids too. But people are like, what? Well, what about the math and the science? I'm like, we'll get there. Let's play. It's okay. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Get out the art supplies.
Take advantage of the time we have. Make the most out of it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just feel like we're discovering so many things about ourselves, individually, collectively, right now, that we would not have had. It's a gift, and we were joking earlier about gaining the COVID-19 around the waistline.
Yes.
But there's so much more that we can gain if we just turn our attention to that. I feel like you cover so much of that in your work. I do want to talk about this authenticity architecture, which is another brand that you work in. And you've got classes out there, videos about this authenticity architecture. Can you talk about a bit about what that is?
Well, it's what my psychotherapy work has evolved into, which really puts together my work as a parent educator and a child development expert and a special educator and a therapist. And it really combines the inner child work, helps people dig up things from their past and connect the dots and rewrite a new story. Because it's kind of like reconstructing a historic home where you have to leave parts of the building but you get to go in. I just have a new client who's an architect, and I'm having so much fun with her because I said, you know what I call my brand now, and I'm gonna want to get some language from you. So she's great. She's super sweet. And, she said the first thing we do is we do a site assessment. We go in and we look at the space and we look at what's working. And we look at what we need to keep and we look at what we want. So that's kind of like the initial work of getting to know your client and helping them do a site assessment and then helping them reconstruct, change the things in the house that aren't working for them, that are a better fit. And so it's reconstructing the authentic self. And I think we lose touch with who we truly are because now I have to share my favorite quote by one of my teachers in Virginia, Catherine Kersey. She says, children come into the world very much like a packet of seeds with no cover on the front. And it's our job, very much like the gardeners, to provide the adequate nutrition, water, air, and light to raise that seed to its highest potential. Not our job to raise a rose into a carnation or a carnation into a rose. And if you look at the old parenting belief systems and the old family systems, it was really about the adults are the masters and you do what I say because I said so and I know better because I'm older and wiser and smarter than you. And really I've learned to know it's really not giving the kids permission to do whatever they want either, but it's more about listening to the wisdom of our children and seeing them and guiding them into their highest potential. So authenticity architecture helps you dig up maybe the pieces that you kind of squished down and created what Donald Winnicott called a false self versus our true self, and find our true self, our authentic self. And it's therapy and coaching, and I also have some courses that I created on my learning site. So it's all of the above, and I think that, we have a lot to learn about what it means to be in our authentic self, and it's both right and left brain. So there's the cognitive as well as the sensory emotional piece. So I've put that all together in my work, and I call it authenticity architecture.
Right, absolutely. Sometimes we need a little bit of guidance, a little bit of coaching to find that authentic self in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not hardwired to do that.
Right.
We're encouraged by the people around us to do that kind of work. And so you've got some classes out there on your website. I'm looking at your website, which is pattiashley.com, P-A-T-T-I, Ashley.com. Mm-hmm. And it's like all of your publications and products. You've got so many things that you're doing on here. You do Authenticity Architects session. You can schedule online. got online courses. Can you walk us through some of your online courses and some of your books?
Yeah, so the courses, the first one I did was called Go In, Not Out, Deepening Parts of Ourselves in Difficult Times, which was written during the quarantine when we were really shelter in place. And it has PowerPoints, it has videos, it has meditations, it has worksheets, and it's just like I said, giving people a compass and some tools in this process of going in and asking these questions, which we've often avoided in being distracted. So I offered that for free because it was COVID, and it's due on your own pace whenever. And then my daughter and I, Elizabeth Ashley Herman, who's a school psychologist and a mother of 2 children and a parent educator as well, created Moms in Real Life. And we had been doing some work together before the pandemic, but we decided to put a course on the Thinkific Authenticity Architect site called Moms in Real Life, which again is helping moms and dads. I also have my friend, my colleague who does the dad's work. I interviewed him too as part of the course to support the dads and that. And then the third course, I'm still working on it, and I keep putting off the date, is transforming grief and fear into love and grace. And that one is really near and dear to my heart because my second book was Letters to Freedom, From Fear to Love to Grace, and it was a memoir of having lost my father at 11 and my fiance at 58, same way, heart attacks on the living room floor. And I just was stunned and thought this is important for me to write about this as for my own personal healing. So I put together a memoir about that. And he was also doing some curriculum that he called From Fear to Love to Grace because he had lost his wife of 20 years pretty suddenly, about a year before we started dating. We had known each other for 20 some years, and he was so devoted to his wife. And so it was a very sweet 2-year relationship. And I want to continue the work that he was doing with this grief work, because really that's what we want to do. Is what he said, very much like I said, it's very much like what I heard the Sufi poet say, break my heart open to a higher love. And that's what he describes as grace, or he described as grace. And, I think when our hearts are broken open, which many of us are having our hearts broken open right now, we have a choice to either close them more tightly and be angry and cynical and grumpy and unhappy, or we can open up to something more. And that's what I think is grace. It's like knowing that we can't really control most of our lives, and yet there is some grace in all of this. And it's even deeper than love, and love is a misunderstood word too, but so is grace. But anyway, so my course is about that. And I think I'm going to put it off until November, which will be the 4th anniversary of when he passed away on November 13th. So to give me some extra time to really delve into this course the way I want to. So those are the 3 courses.
And in your books, you've got Shame-Informed Therapy, Treatment Strategies for Overcoming Core Shame and Reconstructing the Authentic Self. And this is for mental health practitioners, so people who are helping others, right? So that's wonderful. And then you've got Letters to Freedom, From Fear to Love to Grace, and then Living in the Shadow of the Too Good Mother Archetype.
Right.
So necessary. And then, of course, you're in private practice, you clients. And so we can find you on your website, pattiashley.com, P-A-T-T-I, Ashley.com. And I want to say you've got another website as well, but I'm not seeing it right now.
Well, the Authenticity Architects website is a learning platform, and that link should be there where the courses are. If you see Go In, Not Out, there's also the Authenticity Architects link. It could be up at the top too under courses. And then I also do a Facebook Live every Friday at 11. on my Dr. Patti Ashley page, 11 Mountain Time, and I have exciting plans for September. I'm going to interview 3 different professionals who work with shame. One's a musician, a local musician here, who does vocal freedom body work with voice, and I've personally worked with her. She's incredible, Rebecca Folsom. An art therapist in New Mexico who does these great little boxes of sensory healing, and then Katie O'Keefe, who's a counselor here in town and works a lot with addiction and trauma. And so each of those Fridays in September, to promote the Shame book, we're going to be talking with them about their experiences and how it shows up for them in their work. So Friday, 11 Mountain Time on Dr. Patti Ashley page on Facebook.
Facebook. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I think that'll be very, very popular. Have you been doing that for a while now?
A few months. My daughter and I teamed up and we did the Moms in real life 1 month. And so, yeah, I've been doing the Facebook Live probably since February, March. I think when COVID hit, I really kind of got down and said, okay, I'm going to make a commitment to every Friday. That's what it was. Yeah, I was doing a little bit of it, but now that's it. Friday 11. That's where you'll find me.
And for our European listeners, of course, that is Mountain Time. So to tune in live to Facebook, that is wonderful. Is there anything else we haven't covered? Anything you think is important to mention about the work that you do?
I don't have it handy here, but on my website, you can go to the product page, products, I think, and you can see a picture of my Nuff. So I have a picture, a little Nuff, N-U-F-F, I am enough. And since we're radiating being enough, I think that's really important. And because playfulness, again, we're talking about rewiring the right brain, and we want to find humor and playfulness. So I have these little Nuffs on cards, and I just got the site, the Nuff stuff, because I want to figure out a way to get Nuff stuff, even stuffed animals and things like that. But it's a cute little funky little character that a friend of mine drew. And it's a way to because when I show my clients this, you're enough, it's not like saying, just remember you are enough, ENOUGH. It's like, you're enough. And you look at this little enough character and you go, oh, and the body relaxes. So again, this is what we're going for in order to rewire the brain and the nervous system. We're going for, the exhale. So you are enough, N-U-F-F, funny little character. You are enough. So that's my last and final piece for you.
I'm looking at your picture on your website right now. These cute little gift cards, like like you might hand them out. That's just adorable. Yeah, and that's a great way to drive that concept home, because when we say you are enough, you've done enough, you can do enough, we don't necessarily embrace that. It doesn't feel authentic sometimes.
Yeah. And my clients say, I have my enough right here. I keep it on my dresser. I keep it on my computer. I have therapists that order them from me to give out to their clients. And I'd get up and get one, but I've got my COVID from the waist down outfit on. So people can go to my website and see the enough, because that's enough. That's all you need to see tonight. But typically I have one here. But anyway, yeah, it's a lot of fun and laughter. We want to have play and laughter and fun and pleasure. Even in the middle of a pandemic, we can find those moments. As hard as it is, we can do that. And that's going to help the body and the nervous system. So play, have fun, laugh. We're going to get through this, right?
Yes, a collective grief and taking from grief to grace.
Yeah.
And everything in between. Your work is so valuable. Thank you so much for everything you do to help educate, to help clear our energy, to help raise our vibration. It's also needed with your books, your classes, and everything.
Yeah.
Dr. Patti Ashley. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, Dr. Patti Ashley at pattiashley.com. And check out her classes, check out her books, and all the valuable work.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm just so pleased to have you. Thank you.
Radiate Wellness is a community of holistic and alternative healers and consultants based in the Kansas City area, dedicated to helping you create spiritual, energetic, and physical well-being. To learn more about our practitioners, services, classes, and events, or to schedule an appointment, visit us at radiatewellnesscommunity.com.